I'm Dr. Barry, licensed psychologist, and here I share legal and entertainment news from a psychological perspective. The Delphi case is a really tragic case that's about the death of you know me and Libby German and Abby Williams. And this happened back on February 13th, 2017, when they went for a walk on the Delphi Historic Trail and they never returned home. And there was a community-wide search for the girls, and their bodies were recovered the following day near the Monon High Bridge, which is just outside their hometown of Delphi, Indiana. Now, Richard Allen was arrested in 2022, and he talked to police back in 2017, and he said that he had been at the bridge that day, and he denied meeting them, and he pled not guilty. Well, he was held in this secure facility, and this is where the defense is going to say that while he was being detained, that his mental health deteriorated rapidly, and he really struggled mentally. And there was a jail psychologist that talked about the treatment that he received. They also brought up dependent personality disorder, and that isn't one that I've talked about here on my channel before. And so I did want to go into that as well. So once again, the timeline of this case, it goes back to 2017. He's arrested in 2022. And at some point, there are these confessions, but there are also things that he said in those confessions that are not true. So he confessed to unaliving his family, which isn't true. And that's where the defense is claiming that I'm just getting to my notes, that he suffered a mental health crisis that led him to confess. It's my understanding that no DNA or digital evidence links him to this crime. And um and the defense is claiming that a bullet that they found is inconclusive, and that it brings reasonable doubt about Richard Allen's guilt. Oh, y'all, I'm gonna go right into the testimony of Dr. Monica Walla. She is a clinical psychologist. She was a clinical psychologist at the Westville Correctional Facility. It comes out on her cross examination that because of some of her behavior with this case, she no longer goes into the jail. She's still employed by, I think it's Centurion, by this contracting agency. She's still employed with them and she's still doing work, but that some of her behavior on this case, it's my understanding that's why she doesn't go into the jails. And we are going to talk about some of the ethics with this, because there's major ethics, major ethics. And if people have different opinions, we can feel free to disagree. And I'm not talking about this from the perspective of if he did this or not, but what I'm saying is this psychologist, before she was assigned to the case, she listened to podcasts. She was in Facebook groups. If you go out on Reddit, there are she's in Facebook groups. She is commenting on the case. She is taking information that she's learning online, and she's talking with Richard Allen about that. And as a clinical psychologist, I have a major problem with that. And if he is showing signs of significant deterioration to the point of possibly drinking out of the toilet bowl and possibly eating his own feces, banging his head on the wall to the point where they are giving him Haldol. And Haldol is a very powerful first generation antipsychotic, but he also had clinical depression, and they're calling this a brief psychosis when this could be major depression with psychosis. And so all of this just had me pulling my hair out some. And thank you. So two different people emailed me. Thank you to the people that emailed me about this case. I do have the links. So Andrea Burkhart, she has a phenomenal video. Lawyer Lee also has a phenomenal video. I have both of those videos linked down in the description, if because they are in they have traveled to watch this trial and they are reporting on it. Like, it would be major depression with psychotic features. Like, why? Like what in the world? And and so before she even was assigned to him, when she heard about this case, she was intrigued and she started researching it. And it's my understanding at some point she went to the bridge, and all of those things like that could bring in potential bias, and that could go to how credible the jury views her. So I, as a psychologist, I would never ever follow or cover for some reason if I had a client that got involved with a court case or anything like that. I would never do a deep dive into the case if I was going to be called as a witness. Now, sometimes people might look at news articles, but you should never take any information. You shouldn't take that into your clinical practice. And some of those confessions she gave were given to her, and she's the one that is giving her professional opinion on, is he malingering or feigning symptoms? Is he faking symptoms? Is he actually psychotic? Are these confessions legitimate? But if you are invested in this case like a true crime fan, in my opinion, you shouldn't be listening. So it's my understanding she listed 3 or 4 podcasts. So I think she had an hour and a half commute to work or something. And on her way into work, she's listening to podcasts about this case as she goes in to try to do therapy with him. And so that's where it's blowing my mind that, like, I've never heard of something like that happening. Never, never, ever. And Sarah, so that's where I want to get into dependent personality disorder or dependent personality traits. I've worked with clients with those types of traits that and they are extremely suggestible to other people's thoughts, to other people's opinions, to what other people think. He was in solitary confinement for 13 months. 13 months in solitary confinement, like just 30 days in solitary confinement will cause somebody that is healthy to completely deteriorate. So he was admitted on S watch, and then at some point they realized he wasn't getting better, and so they did let him have certain things that normally people on S watch wouldn't have. He was completely disconnected from his family, and there's a part of me that's thinking, would he say anything just to please the people around him, especially if he does have dependent personality traits. And and so the psychologist, it's my understanding, she was also posting on social media, like I don't think she revealed anything confidential, like that she learned from, but she was sharing her thoughts and opinions on the case publicly on social media. And for me, that's a problem. All that came out during her deposition over the summer, um, including, okay, so we're just gonna go ahead and get to it. It's also, I think she admitted that she went into the jail system because there's another guy. Let me look up the name. Y'all know Keegan Klein. Keegan Klein is was another person of interest. She researched that person's file, which she was not supposed to. She should not have researched that person's file. She should not be doing research on a case where she is the treating therapist. Like she wasn't called to do an assessment or an evaluation of him. He was in the jail with mental health problems, and so she was supposed to be giving him treatment. That's what was supposed to be happening. And like, it's so troubling, and that's why we absolutely had to talk about it. And so, Tori, a little later, we are going to get to the traits of dependent personality disorder once I get through some of the ethics and things in this first part, okay? I will get to that. Um, Hello, welcome to everyone. Yeah, and so it's my she was no longer, coming back into the prisons. That's my understanding. I think she still works for that company, and if you Google that company's name and her name, there are a few lawsuits that pop up. I do not know the status of any of those potential, and I don't know if any of those potential lawsuits are valid. Welcome, welcome. So glad to cover this one. Um, and so that's where um uh, I don't want to I think we should live in a world where 2 kids can go walking on their own, 2 teens. They were 14 and 13. They were responsible. People shouldn't do crimes. So they should have been safe enough to do that. That's just my thought. Uh Daria, I saw your comment. All right, so let me get to her testimony. Wow. So on day 11 of this case, ooh, it focused on the testimony of Dr. Monica Walla, a clinical psychologist, and she was the head clinical psychologist at Westville Correctional Facility. She started treating him in November of 2022 and met with him weekly, monitoring his mental health, particularly his thoughts about self deleting. Walla testified that Allen confessed multiple times to what happened in a matter-of-fact way, revealing that he followed the girls on February 13th and ordered them down a hill and intended to so trigger warning for SA, intended to R them. He told Walla that he believed the girls were older and then admitted to um do and then covering them with sticks and then continuing on as normal. But it's my understanding that this confession was after he had received the discovery in his case. And it's my understanding none of his confessions have included anything that only the person that did the crime would know. So it's my understanding that after he got his discovery and saw what he was facing, that he lost it and his mental health declined quickly. And Andrea over on her channel, she talked about how trauma. So seeing photos like that and images and knowing that you're the one that's being charged with this, normally uh, I don't and so I'm not a forensic. So I'm just a clinical psychologist. I don't look at gory pictures. If I was forced to look at gory images and at, you know, deceased children, that would be that would be traumatizing for me. And and it's my understanding that that his mental health deteriorated after that. Okay? He had erratic behavior like eating his own feces and he was skipping meals. So if he skipped 4 meals, that would be a like he would get written up for that, but if he skipped 3 meals, there wouldn't be any like consequence for that. And often, I think it did come up according to the lawyers that I watched that are in the case, that are in the courtroom observing, that sometimes food is the one thing that inmates can control. So it can be common for inmates to decline food when there's nothing else they can control. On April 24th, 2013, he had an emotional breakdown, prompting an involuntary injection for his safety. She said her primary goal was ensuring his well-being while he was there. But then during cross-examination, okay, so a bunch of stuff came up and some of the details of some of the things he confessed to and her thoughts about that. So she was brought by the state and she provided her testimony on cross-examination. The defense questioned her about her access to Department of Corrections databases and her participation in online discussions, podcasts, and social media pages about the case, raising concerns about was she impartial? Because before she was even assigned the case, she was already interested in it. And then she was assigned the case. And in my opinion, she should have deferred it to somebody else. If she was already that interested, then I don't think she should have been the one on it. And I think they were using Haldol to try to because they thought he was having psychosis, but it wasn't clear to me, y'all correct me in the chat. It wasn't clear to me whether or not he was on his antidepressants, because when he went to jail, he was prescribed antidepressant medications, and normally you would start something like Seroquel, you would do some other medication, you wouldn't necessarily do Haldol, and that was against his will. And at one point he got 2. So the shot gives a monthly dose of Haldol for somebody with schizophrenia. And after the first dose, he was continuing to exhibit erratic and um, behaviors that were unsafe. So they within 30 days, they gave him a second dose. And she noted that his eyes were like almost bulging out of his head. And let me look that up. Eye bulging and Haldol. If that is a common thing. Uh, Because there are some other more common issues. So y'all know I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a medical doctor. I had never heard of somebody having like bulging eyes while on Haldol. But she made a note of that in particular. And so all right. Wow. Somebody said he had 2 visits in 13 months. Wow. And once he was transferred out of that more intensive, restrictive environment, so the environment he was in, he wasn't being held in like a normal jail where people are held before trial. Like he went to this he went to this extra super secure facility where some people are there because they've been convicted of a crime. And it was it was wow. And so, um and this is what Andrea said, and then also I've seen other people make this statement as well. Let's say he is found guilty. It sounds like he did receive some inhumane treatment and that his treating psychologist, the ethical boundaries are really blurry. They're really blurry and they shouldn't be that blurry. And so, welcome to the membership. So, he had a history before he was arrested. He already had a history of major depression. Okay. I've known some people that don't do well on the second generation antipsychotics. Some people can be, but they don't want people on Haldol for a long period of time sometimes, because of the potential side effects. But there are some people that, because that's the only medication that manages their psychosis, that's what they end up staying on. All right. All right. So let's see. She admitted that she shared information about the case with Allen. She tried to tell him that he had supporters out there, that people were talking about his case, and there were people that supported him, and she meant for that to help give him hope, but I d that's just the odd. I don't That's weird. I've never heard of a jail psychologist doing that. I'll leave that there. She acknowledged that she would have approached So this is where the news article is saying it different than what the lawyers reported. So the lawyers, because she was asked if she had it to do again, would she do anything different? And it's my understanding she said she wasn't sure. Like she didn't say yes. She would definitely do things different if she had it to do again. It's my understanding that she was kind of like, I'm not sure. The defense discussed over 20 monitoring sheets that were filled out by him. No, by Dr. Walla. Information on the sheets focused on his mental health and physical and emotional behaviors, as well as things he said to her during the meetings. Allen had multiple stressors that led to him having a change in behavior, these being confined in small spaces. Oh, and he had ants and rodents in his cell. I did not hear that. Ooh, wow. Um, Walla mentioned in a few of her monitoring sheets, he was second guessing himself when inmates called him a baby K and told him to K himself. Yeah. Um, all right. Allen said he felt so November 21st, 2022, Allen said he felt that he was being treated as if he was already guilty and that he didn't do this. So that's what he told her November 21st. Allen also said, I would never be okay with being in prison for something I didn't do. At many points from April to June 2023, Wallen noticed that Allen became paranoid, depressed, and began writing S notes and giving away things from his cell, which is a major red flag. Wallace said 3 separate antipsychotic injections were given involuntarily to Allen on separate occasions to keep him safe. Allen's intake form when he first arrived said that he was 5'5" and was 173 pounds. Wallace said that the Department of Corrections cannot hold someone for more than 30 days in solitary confinement if they're identified as having a severe mental health problem, but he was held in solitary for 13 months, which she said just being in solitary confinement where the lights do not shut off. You're in this white room, lights don't turn off for 13 months all by yourself, that could have led to his decline in mental health treatment. It's my understanding that there isn't. It's my understanding that there isn't. Um, so that will be up to the family. That will be up to Richard Allen and his legal team. I think they're trying to get through this trial first, and then they'll decide what to do next. Um, from everything I've seen, it seems like, and I don't know what the board that regulates Indiana psychologists. So the things that can cause you to lose your license are violating your state ethics board. I don't know if y'all know this. So if you file a complaint with the American Psychological Association, all the American Psychological Association can do is kick that person out of the American Psychological Association. And so in psychologists, so I have to pay to be a member of the APA. And I have student loans. So like there have been times that I have been a member. There have been times that I haven't been a member. But what's more important are when things are reported to the state versus APA. So APA just gives general guidelines, but it's just the general rules for what psychologists should and shouldn't do, but it doesn't give they don't have any power over licenses. So, like, the American Psychological Association, they don't issue licenses to people, if that makes sense. Ooh, whoa. So I love Dr. John from Hidden True Crime said Alan started showing psychotic symptoms when he and his lawyers decided on him. Okay, mental health component of his case. So I don't know. That could be. I do not know. Yeah, it's okay. I know. I could figure it out though. That's happened to me before. So autocorrect is the worst. And I don't know. Oh, okay. Let's see. Because we are going to get to talking about dependent personality disorder. Just give me a few more minutes. Um, During redirect from the state, Dr. Walla was asked if her supervisors were aware that she was a fan of true crime and had taken up an interest in this case. And so I guess during her deposition, her answer was no. But then I guess her supervisors were like, "Oh no, you did tell us." But uh, there's a part of me that's wondering if everybody's I don't know. So I'm hoping things are accurate and true, but she now says that her supervisors expressed no concerns about her taking meetings with Alan, knowing that she was interested that she's likes true crime. I don't know, but yeah. After a few months of meeting with Alan, Walla began to share information she saw from podcasts and online with him. She wanted to remind him that he had support and to give him hope. During recross examination, the defense alluded that Alan might have said things that were true. I don't know. Okay. Wait a minute. So this is I'm just reading what's written. The defense alluded that Allen might have said things that were true. Okay. Walla replied, saying that could be right. Walla also used the DOC database to search for things for her own personal interest and agreed her action went against the policies in place by the American Psychological Association. But like I said, the state regulations are more important than the APA regulations. Um, the defense mentioned that Walla had visited that bridge. Uh, all right. All right. So that is her testimony. There are much more thorough deep dives. I'm talking like 2 to 3 hours deep dives that I have linked down in the description. Those are the high points of what I wanted to share. Now, I wanted to share, can a therapist search their client online? All right. And so there's actual ethics to this. This is something that is researched. I'm trying to make myself smaller. There we go. All right. So, ethics of electronic searches for client information. So, respecting privacy, informed consent, fairness, and integrity. So, this is just a general article. This is just about general mental health professionals and what we should all do. And then each state will have their own, if they do have a regulation on something like this. And if they don't have one, because a client could say that, especially commenting on a case that she's treating somebody for, that could, even if she's not sharing um confidential information in those chats, but just being in those chats and commenting publicly, that that could have an impact on the therapeutic relationship. And the ethics are meant to protect the client and to also protect the therapist, psychologist, counselor as well. It's meant to protect both. The psychologist, therapist, counselor, they're the ones that have more power. So often more is put on the therapist than on the client. And so mental health professionals, so these are the key points. Um, we have to consider, do electronic searches, does that violate privacy? Does that violate any ethical violations? We should obtain consent before searching information on social media or the internet, and they should verify the accuracy of the information they receive electronically. With the growing use of digital technology in practice, mental health professionals need to navigate the complexities of client privacy and technology when considering whether and how to gather information about clients electronically. Respecting client privacy and confidentiality helps build trust with clients. And so there are codes in the APA, National Association of Social Workers, and the American Counseling Association. Each instruct their members to inform clients about the nature and extent of confidentiality, including exceptions when they may be authorized legally or ethically to share confidential information with others. And examples of that would be, so I bill insurance. So clients have to know, I do have to disclose your diagnosis to your insurance company. And if your insurance company ever says, like, we need to review this file to see if it was medically necessary, give us all the notes, that I might have to disclose, like I might have to share those notes with their insurance company, with their medical insurance company. Or if there's allegations of harm to a child, or even suspected harm to a child or an adult, that I might have to report that information to social services. And so the limits of confidentiality should always be discussed. It's normally in the client paperwork. And then also there's like if a client is talking about harming themselves or harming somebody else, that's another reason that a therapist might have to break confidentiality. And when I'm working with children and teens, safety is another one. So if I have a client that tells me they're going to run away, and they're going to run away with like their, you know, I don't know, with they're going to do something unsafe, I would have a duty to warn the parents. Because I'm the therapist I would try to see if they would agree to talk with their parents, if they would agree to, but and then we would talk about how the client's okay, like, hey, this is information I have to share. Do you want to be here when I tell them, or do you not want to be here? And sometimes the client's like, I want to hear what you say. Okay. Or they're like, nope, like you just talk to them, do what you got to do. It's fine or whatever. But yeah. Respecting client privacy also entails that the mental health professional's responsibility to refrain from soliciting personal information from the client unless it's relevant to the objectives of their work. Um, Reasons for gathering electronic information. So there might be potential reasons, but you should get consent. So that is that part. Now, do y'all have any questions before I go on to this next part? I'm excited about this next part, talking about dependent personality. Yeah. All right. And then, of course, y'all know y'all can always list any questions or concerns later. So y'all know I adore Dr. Ramani. Just in case this video is not available on replay, I'm going to let the video play. It's only 3 minutes long. And then I will talk after. If this video is missing, I have links to the video down in the description. Let's go.
What does DPD look like in a parent?
So in a parent, parent who has dependent personality disorder is often going to be, if there's another parent in the house, they're often going to be very reliant on that other parent for making decisions for the family. They're probably very much going to socialize their child to never rock the boat. They'll be very, very sort of shy about ever approaching that child's teachers if there's ever a problem. So they're often not very effective advocates for their children because they're so afraid of rocking that boat and making waves. They may actually train their children to be a little bit dependent, that the world's a very dangerous place and you better make sure you fit in, make sure you don't stick out, make sure nobody thinks you're being strange or unusual. So they can really foster that anxiety in their child. So it's, and they also may sort of stunt their own child because they don't want their child to go and leave them on their own. So they may actually make the child quite fearful themselves because they feel you don't want to be out there on your own. It's a very scary world out there. You don't want to go live by yourself. And so that child may internalize that. And I would say a child who has a parent with dependent personality style or disorder, as soon as they turn 18, they're either going to run away as far as they can, or they're really going to stick close for a long time and foster those patterns within themselves.
What about for the spouse who has DPD? What does that look like?
So if you're the spouse of someone who has dependent personality, initially you might have thought you've met someone who's really sort of quiet and yielding and maybe shy and doesn't like to make a lot of noise. And that might even be a little relieving for you, because especially if you just came out of another relationship where someone was more combative and antagonistic and fighting. Over time, it can be frustrating, because especially when big ticket decisions come along and you want them to weigh in. Hey, should we buy this house? We'll do anything you want, honey. And then you'll say, help me out here. We're about to make the biggest decision of our lives. So it can start to feel frustrating, because the spouse who doesn't have dependent personality may start feeling more like a parent. And so they're sort of will feel like this differential in the relationship. The danger is that's if you have a nice, well put together spouse. If you have a spouse who is narcissistic or psychopathic or otherwise antagonistic, high conflict, or difficult, they really might take advantage of that situation. And it might become abusive. They may say really callous things to this person with dependent personality who they know will never leave. They could take financial advantage of them. They may be physically abusive to them, knowing the person with dependent personality will probably never leave. And so there can be a danger in that dynamic too.
Thanks for watching. Your next step is
All right. And as I said, I have the full links to that one down in the description. I have another one. And so dependent personality disorder overlaps with a lot of other things. So just because somebody maybe has fears of rejection or abandonment, or because a person might have difficulty saying no or be a people pleaser, that does not necessarily mean that they would meet criteria for the personality disorder. And so that's where talking with your own professional, but this diagnosis came up as potentially being related to Richard Allen. And and so no, so I just played that video just because it was showing the impact, like how a person might behave. And that's why I said individuals with dependent personality disorder, they can be very suggestible and they want to please others. They want to make others okay. They want to do the right thing. I do not know if he has this diagnosis. I wonder if the defense has had him evaluated by a psychologist. And I'm guessing if they have an expert, I'm guessing the state would likely have him evaluated as well, because it also came up in Dr. Wallace's testimony that she never did any testing with him, which really she's a treating therapist. And so that would be a completely different situation. But with if you do have a forensic psychologist going in, they could test for things. Is a person truly psychotic, or are they faking these symptoms? Because I didn't hear that his competence was ever questioned. Because I would have thought competency to stand trial, if somebody is exhibiting psychosis and they're doing all these things, I was surprised that there could have been information about this case can be hard to find because they don't have public hearings. So it's just if people go, people hear all of these things that happened. I did see a question. How would you treat kids with problems because of a parent with dependent personality disorder? So the most important thing for me to do first would be to get that parent in their own treatment. Because let's say the kids are young If the kids are young, I really need that parent to get into their own therapy, because often they will bring the children to therapy, but sometimes they won't get therapy for themselves. And so that would be kind of the first start. Um, Anybody that's followed me for a while, so I became a therapist to help kids. And then during COVID, realized, wait a minute, if I really want to help kids, I need to help the adults. So I shifted my practice to working more with parents, to working more with adults, because sometimes there can be some generational trauma, some cycles that have to be broken. Because often a parent that has dependent personality disorder, in my experience, there normally is some history of trauma or something. Normally something has happened that's created this worldview that the world isn't safe, and that they need to rely completely and fully, that they can't trust themselves at all. And so that would be kind of my first step, would be to get the adults in therapy. And then for the children, they would need to learn emotional boundaries, and that they're not responsible for the adult's emotion, because sometimes adults with sometimes the parent with dependent personality disorder, sometimes they become dependent on their children, and there can be this unhealthy dynamic but with the parent and the child. And so that works better in, like, with older children that are 10 years old and up. But sometimes I've worked with some very uh like with some younger kids that had to grow up way too fast because of what they had been exposed to, and we were able to do some different work. This case is messed up on so many levels. I think RA is being railroaded, so the case can be closed. Thank you for this coverage. I'm glad to share. It sounds like there might have been some other leads, and I don't know that everything else was really looked into. And so, why would the guards be qualified to tell the jury he was malingering? So I would think you would want a forensic psychologist. I would think you would want somebody to say whether or not he was, and somebody who was neutral. Um, I think those guards might have some experience working, because I think he was on a mental health section of the jail. So they might have a bachelor's in psychology or something, but they wouldn't know treatment. And so it's a whole thing. Yeah, it is hard, and it's my understanding that the prosecution is telling the witnesses to, like, not talk into the mic. That's what I've heard lawyer Lee say, and also Lauren from Hidden True Crime. It's incredibly difficult for even the people who are there to hear some of the testimony, because the mic is like, people aren't talking into the mic. And so after the case, I don't know, because we haven't seen the interrogation videos. I don't believe these videos that people who are in court have seen. I don't think we've seen those. And all right. I did enjoy Andrea's coverage. I had not found her channel. I saw she was a guest. I think she was on a guest on Grizzly True Crime, and she might have been a guest on The Lawyer You Know as well. And congrats to her for hitting 100K. Yeah, the videos are sealed right now. Thank you. Um, yeah. And so that's where, and the jury is asking really good questions, because Dr. Wallace said he might have a brief psychotic disorder, but in my mind, if somebody already has major depression, being in solitary confinement could lead them to psychosis. Their depression could get so bad. So there is major depression, severe with psychotic features. Like that's in the DSM-5. So that's what I likely would have diagnosed. Um, I've been practicing since 2010 under my own license. I work with very complex, very difficult cases. So I believe the jury asked about if a brief psychotic episode could be, if it could happen more than once, and the answer to that was yes. They also asked Dr. Walla, 'cause they got to ask Dr. Walla some questions. So they asked her a few different questions. I forgot the other ones, but I know, Andrea I know Andrea and Lawyer Lee covered them, and I'm pretty sure Lauren covered them as well. All right. Yeah, so this is live number 1. I have a second one scheduled for after this. It's so kids cancel. Like when it's Halloween, kids wanna go trick or treating. So nobody wants therapy. And I have candy, so if anybody did come in person, I had candy today, but everybody canceled, and so it's fine. So the jury is seeing the actual videos, but they're just not publicly available. So the jury did see the videos, the jury can see them again. But we as the audience, so people who are not there at the trial, they can't be there. All right. Thank you, Sarah, for gifting a membership. Major depressive disorder with psychotic features. And so they were talking about, I think at some point he didn't sleep for 9 days, and that's enough to cause psychosis. But so I need pitch black to sleep. Like I need it to be dark. I have blackout curtains. I need it to be quiet. And so that's why I don't do crimes, but like if jail would be difficult. I would probably have insomnia. There were some questions of could he be showing signs of bipolar disorder, but it would be rare because he's in his like is he in his 60s? How old is he? How old is Richard Allen? Um the typical age of because it would be rare for somebody to have their first manic episode in their like that's my understanding this late, like normally 20s, late teens to 20s, maybe 30, but like it's normally earlier in life when people would have their first manic episode. Now sometimes trauma can trigger psychosis, and that was something that Andrea talked about and that I agreed with. So I am going trick or treating with my son later. Okay, he's 52. He's 50 something. I see 52. I see 54. So he's 50 something. All right. Um, this whole case is just so sad. I have another video on dependent personality disorder by Psych to go. Um, all right. And so once again, and they're going to say it in this video, just because somebody identifies with some of this does not mean that they meet criteria for this disorder. On replay, if this video is gone, please know the description is down in the link. Okay? All right, let's go.
When you rely too much on others to help you out. Dependent personality disorder, DPD, is a cluster C personality disorder, which is known as the cluster characterized by anxious behaviors. People with DPD are often incredibly fearful and have little confidence in themselves. Disclaimer, it's important to note that DPD has many traits that align with other disorders, especially other personality disorders and anxiety disorders. In order to be diagnosed, you must speak with a qualified mental health professional who can discern the differences between this disorder and the similar one. To better understand dependent personality disorder, DPD, let's look at some of the most common signs. Number 1, you find it extremely difficult to be alone. Do you tend to overlook your own boundaries in order to appease others you rely on? Perhaps the biggest sign of DPD is an intense fear of being alone. You may find that you avoid rejection at all costs to avoid being left alone. You may find yourself completely lost when alone and desperately waiting for the other person to come back. It's common for people with DPD to feel that they have no sense of identity apart from their partner, friend, or relative, and will become intensely anxious when they're absent. This other person fulfills your needs, and the person with DPD will feel directionless without them. Number 2, you rely on others to make the decisions in your life. Is it always a challenge to make your own decisions in anything? Whether it's a big life change or something small like picking out dinner, submissiveness is another key sign of DPD. People with DPD will often need to go through someone else to make sure that they're on the right path. Work may be difficult for a person with DPD as they are unable to complete tasks on their own, even if they are perfectly skilled to do so. This dependency can be extremely taxing on relationships and wear on the people they depend on. Additionally, people with DPD may be vulnerable to abuse in relationships. especially if they are someone that takes advantage of their disorder and tendencies. Number 3, you do things to win other people's approval. People with DPD often have a low self-esteem coupled with a fear of abandonment or being alone. One of the ways people with this disorder try to avoid rejection is by people-pleasing. This can come at the expense of your own well-being. In order to avoid rejection, you may often partake in activities that go against what you would normally do. This disorder may be why you disregard barriers and put yourself in uncomfortable positions to ensure that they'll accept you. You may find yourself bending over backwards to please other people, no matter the cost. Number 4, you are highly sensitive to criticism. Is it easy for you to take criticism with a pinch of salt? No. Are you afraid just a pinch would be way too little? As someone with DPD, you are deeply afraid of rejection, so hearing someone speak out against you can be incredibly painful. It can give you the impression that the other person is going to leave. Therefore, DPD can trigger submissive and approval-seeking behaviors as a coping mechanism to try to avoid criticism. Number 5, you need a lot of reassurance. DPD is common in people with low self-esteem. You'll find yourself often relying heavily on validation and reassurances. You may find yourself unable to make any kind of decision without going through another person and having them give input on what you do. This dependency can be so difficult for people with DPD and their romantic partners that it can take its toll on relationships. The person with DPD will often get into another relationship quickly to avoid the overarching fear of being alone. And number 6, you find it difficult to start things on your own. An inability to take initiative is another big sign of DPD. You may find that you cannot start projects on your own as you need to go through another person first. If you're left by yourself, you may notice that you are overwhelmed and struggle to find where to start. People close to those with DPD will often need to be present at all times to help with these decisions, putting a strain on their relationships. The dependency is a necessity, and people struggling with the disorder find themselves unable to operate on their own terms. Everyone depends on another for survival, but there comes a point when this need is too much. DPD is difficult to live with and can greatly reduce your quality of life. However, it's important to know that it is possible to get help. DPD is highly treatable, so getting in contact with the right mental health professional is often a great first step to getting your life on track. Did you recognize any of these signs? Are there any others?
All right. All right. And so I saved a lot of really good questions because let's see. All right. So all mental health is on a spectrum, especially the personality disorders. And I talk about this a lot when I talk about narcissism and rejection sensitive dysphoria. Rejection sensitive dysphoria is commonly seen in people with ADHD or that have neurodevelopmental disorders because the way they are can cause them to seek approval. And I see that as different than dependent personality disorder. So, my clients with untreated ADHD, where their fear is that people are going to say they have too much energy, or they talk too much, or they interrupt too much, or something like that, things that are their symptoms of ADHD, often treating ADHD helps with the symptoms of rejection sensitive dysphoria. All right. And but we all can seek the approval of others. The thing with the far end of the spectrum of dependent personality is they won't do anything on an individual with that diagnosis really feeds off of the approval of others. And when I have clients with these traits or with this particular diagnosis, I will not give them I won't give them direct feedback because they're wanting me to say something so that they do it. So if I told a client with this diagnosis, "Oh, I think your partner might be harmful," like they might break up with their partner because I said it and not because it was something they felt or something they wanted. And so often the first step is helping them find their voice and their sense of self and what they want, knowing that they are valued and worthy, because often they've become this chameleon and they've realized how they can get the love and attention and support that they need by not, push rocking the boat. And sometimes they come from families that were pretty emotionally chaotic, and they might have been the people pleaser. But like I said, this is the actual personality disorder is definitely at an extreme. All right. Um, Lindsay, thank you for mentioning this. I did not know that he had been hospitalized for depression. I had heard that they had seen medical records and that he had given a release he had signed a release for them to see any prior treatment records um, of him in the past. Okay, yes. So approval of others, validation from others. So question. Um, Let me get the DSM characteristics, because I don't think either one of those videos went over the DSM-5 dependent personality disorder, because that will have the exact. Okay. So the criteria for avoidant personality, no, that's not avoidant. I went to the wrong one. the the criteria for dependent personality disorder is a pervasive and excessive need to be taken care of that leads to submissive and clingy behaviors and fears of separation beginning in early adulthood and going on, has difficulty making everyday decisions without excessive amounts of advice and reassurance from others, needs others to assume responsibility for most major areas of their life, difficulty expressing disagreement with others because of fear of loss of support or approval. And I'm just listing all of them because I think you have to have 5 or more in order to meet these criteria. Difficulty initiating projects or doing things on their own because of, so ADHD, the lack of difficulty starting things is more about motivation than a lack of confidence. And so it's very important to realize that difficulty starting things is due to a lack of confidence in their judgment abilities, instead of a lack of motivation or energy. Goes to excessive lengths to obtain nurturance and support from others, to the point of volunteering to do things that are unpleasant, feels uncomfortable or helpless when alone because of exaggerated fears of being unable to care for themselves, urgently seeks another relationship as the source of care or support when close relationships end, is unrealistically preoccupied with fears of being left to take care of themselves. So those are the actual criteria. All right. So rejection sensitive dysphoria, it's not an actual diagnosis in the DSM-5. Um, it is something that we use to describe a phenomena that we see, but it's not in the DSM. Does the ICD, the rest of the world's DSM, cover personality disorders? Let's see. Personality disorders in ICD. I think they're up to the 11 now. So yes. So it is in the ICD-11. So there's a borderline pattern, personality. Yeah. So there, yes, yes, yes. It looks like there is personality dysfunction, personality disorders in the ICD-11. Okay. Some countries might use it less. Yeah. What if any? Wait a minute. So how can they possibly be harmful to the people that they're relying on? What I've seen more common is that they end up with someone that is either psychopathic or narcissistic. They can end up with somebody that takes advantage of them. um, them being harmful to others, sometimes with their children, they will shelter them too much, which can stunt a child's ability to grow, progress, all those things. So there can be this excessive fear for the child to be on their own, to do their own thing. There can be that fear. All right. And it comes from a safety, like it's more of it's not like a healthy boundary thing. It's more out of their own fear. And I do have a video. I have an ADHD playlist, and I have a video on rejection sensitive dysphoria. Sarah, you have RBF? Oh my gosh. All right. Let me know if you all have any other questions about this case. A few of you all asked for me to cover this one, and it is very interesting. Really glad that I got to cover it. I was that whole thing about the psychologist. Let me just go over my notes to see if I missed anything. Um It sounds like before the confession, he had possibly had some psychosis. There was this question of rounds versus sessions because the psychologist had to do rounds, but rounds is just checking in with every person on your caseload. An actual therapy session is like that 20, 30 hour long session. So rounds is sometimes done with the psychiatrist. I don't know how they do it at the jail. When we did rounds, we would sit and discuss each case. Often the psychiatrist was the one that did rounds and did a quick check-in with everyone. Daria, I'm gonna save your question. Let's see. Um, she knew he was coming and she really wanted. So Dr. Walla knew he was coming and really wanted to work with him, but it seemed like she didn't separate her personal interest from treatment. And that's based on the video from Andrea and based on her hearing of her testimony. Um, he was saying all kinds of things. Um, yeah. So it looks like he might have been on Seroquel possibly in the past. I'm not sure. Seroquel came up somehow, but nobody provided where Seroquel fit in this whole thing. Seroquel is an antipsychotic. It's a second generation antipsychotic. And difference between first generation and second generation. The second generation antipsychotics have less side effects. They often cause weight gain, but Abilify. There are a few other second generation antipsychotics. At low levels, they can be used to stabilize behavior, and at those higher levels, they can be used to treat bipolar disorder as well. All right. Let's see. Um, I thought it was interesting that she doesn't work for the prison anymore, and it still blows my mind that she was commenting on social media while treating him because, like, even if she was interested in it before he was her therapist, but to continue to search out information on it even while he's your therapist, while you're his therapist, I feel like, ugh, that yeah. Seroquel can make you sleepy, yeah. Um, yeah, and so she was asked, "Would you stop following the case?" And she said, "Probably." And then this whole issue of her shredding her notes came into play where because she would take handwritten notes and then she would transcribe them. But sometimes for therapists, we can have case notes, that's our clinical note, and then sometimes you can have your what's the word? It's not progress. So you have your progress note, your clinical note, and then you can have just like your therapy note, which is just your any observations, but sometimes everything doesn't end up in the actual in the documentation. Um and it sounds like she did write everything that she wrote on the paper that she transcribed everything over. I think that the defense was just trying to possibly plant in one juror's mind, like, could she have written something wrong or something? But it doesn't seem like she did. And the fact that she contributed to social media posts and recommended specific podcasts. Ooh. And then I was surprised. Y'all tell me in the chat if I'm wrong, but I was surprised that she never requested to watch the videos of him while he was in solitary confinement for those 13 months. So while he was in that cell for those 13 months, he was recorded 24/7. So there's video of whatever happened in that cell, and it's my understanding that she never asked to view them. And if a guard tells me my patient is eating their, like, trigger warning, like, if I is eating their feces, I would have asked, "Can you?" I would have asked to see the video. Like, of all the things, like, why wouldn't you ask to watch like, I would want to see my client's behavior, especially if their behavior is and we have this footage available. Now, I don't know if it was jail policy that you couldn't, but, like, the defense asked her. It's my understanding the question came from the defense. Did she view the videos of him? Because he's recorded 24/7. Did she review it? And she said no. Because I might have, if there's monitoring of my client, if I had access to go to the, like, because sometimes they have a control room. So I've had to check in to juvenile detention centers before, and I've been in one of those recorded rooms where I would give psychological testing, often to youth that were detained. It was not I didn't do competency, I didn't do like insanity. I just did general clinical assessments for people to make treatment recommendations. Because sometimes it's, should this person be discharged home? Do they need additional treatment? What would help this individual be successful? Is there some undiagnosed mental health condition? So I would go to the jail to do that. And I would have to walk through the control room. And the control room had all of the screens and monitors, because in order for them to open the door, because all the doors are locked, they would see on the camera that somebody was standing in front of the door, and they would buzz the door open. You open the door, but there are all these locked doors for security. But like, if I was going in to meet with a client, and if I could go and just view them first, because it's my understanding there were times when he was naked, and, like, there were times that he was engaging in some in behaviors. So I would have wanted to see, like, hey, can I just check on my client like before I go in? Are they are they dressed today? Like, what's going on? I would have To me, that's what I would have wanted. I wouldn't have been on podcasts, like, trying to hear what people think of the case. I would have totally wanted to see, especially if you're going to get on the stand and claim that there are times you believe that the person was feigning or faking the symptoms. And so, um all right. Does decision paralysis fit into this, such as career? So that would just be like one decision. So decision paralysis can happen with anything. And so that would just be like a moment of just kind of not knowing what to do. Um, Transitions are hard. Transitions bring up normal and natural anxiety. For some people, it gets to the point where they get so stuck on, what if I make the wrong choice or the wrong decision? For me, when I applied for colleges, because I wanted to go to Virginia Tech so bad, mostly because I love football. At the time, I told you I don't watch football as much anymore. I'm married now. I don't watch as much football, but I wanted to be able to go to the football games. Like, that's. But I went to the campus. I loved the campus, and I was second guessing myself because I only applied to 3 colleges. and Virginia Tech was the only one that I wanted to go to. So before decision day, there was a lot of anxiety. For graduate school, I only applied to one graduate school. And when I during my interview for graduate school, one of my future professors, she was like, so what happens if you don't get in? I was like, I'm going to be back next year. Like I feel what I could learn here will be invaluable to my training as a psychologist, and this is the only school I want to go to. So I was super anxious, a lot of anxiety about a lot of anxiety. And I even have so I am going to work on some sounds for my soundboard. If y'all see the tree, so this is my work office. I'm not gonna get a soundboard for here, but I do have one in my home office, and so I will add. Don't do crimes. I'm gonna add that to the soundboard, and I'm gonna add. I don't do names. I don't do names. Help me in the chat. I don't do names. I'm gonna add those two to the soundboard. All right. All right. It was super like, why wouldn't you look at the videos? Because I'm wondering if the defense has subpoenaed those videos, and if they're gonna have an expert that's gonna I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know what's gonna happen. Uh did I miss a conversation? I probably missed a question. If y'all have a question for me, put some cues in front of it, or we are about to hop to the next. So, ooh, boy. So this one is a feelings wheel. Boy. So we start with angry, fearful, bad, surprised. I don't love bad, but I get it. Like sometimes people feel bad, but it's a feelings wheel. I have it linked in my Amazon. I think under office. I think it's under my office. I think that's the list that's on. It didn't come stuffed, so it's just the pillowcase, and it came with this one and this one. Ecstasy is on this one, but because I work with, these are my two feelings pillows for if people need help finding feelings. Uh, Kids love taking this apart, and it's so hard to put back together. Why didn't his defense use mental illness? So I think they're saying the confession what that he didn't do it. So his defense is saying not guilty, he didn't do it, and the confession was him in psychosis or him under emotional distress, or because he has these dependent personality traits, he just wanted to please them, and he would say anything to 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 feel that he's liked, or I don't know. So I think that's where the defense is going with it. We will see. We will see. All right. Why didn't the defense use so I just answered that one, Sarah. I got you, Sarah. I got you. Okay, good. Yeah, so yeah. So I have the DSM-5, but I still have to use ICD-10 codes. And then whenever the systems update to 11, I'll use 11. But yeah. Um Solitary for 13 months would drive anybody to the brink of psychosis. Anybody. Uh, Doctor, who was it? Mr. Beast he's done, and some other people have done those solitary videos. And what was the guy's name? So this is where I get to forget the guy's name, because Jimmy went back and paid this individual because they did the solitary confinement on I'm so bad with names. Because the first try, because Dogpack did an interview with the guy. Y'all probably know in the chat. Um, I've went all the way down the Mr. Beast rabbit hole. He's being like, uh, I never want to cross. Who is it? The woman that like should have come in third. Mancino? Mancino? I like she supposedly sent the chats to the FBI and who knows what'll come of that, but good gosh. Really, things went downhill fast. I have to find that guy's name. Um I'm so bad with names. But there was a guy that he was the first individual to do the challenge where they were doing solitary confinement. They left the screen on, they left the lights on all the time. They never turned them off. At times they pumped in hideous music and all of that was just so sad. Um, it is 80 degrees in Virginia for some reason because to be um I wanted to be a hokey bird tonight. So I will show y'all what I would have done as my costume if it wasn't so hot. Um Is it this one? It's this one. So it's my hokey bird costume. This was totally what I was gonna do, and it's gonna be way too hot. So I am not going to do that. Jake Whittle, thank you. See, y'all are the best. Jake Weddle is the one that did that. So I did consider law school, but I like helping people before they get in trouble. And I considered forensic, but with forensic, people are going to lie to you. And people lie to me, all the time, but like it's not the same. So forensic psychologists hold this weight where you literally have somebody's life in your hands. And you have to and you're also like you're supposed to be on the side of justice and you're supposed to figure out what's what and that's not interesting to me. That's just not interesting to me. So oh, it's a Hokey bird. A Hokie is a current or former Virginia Tech student. It looks a lot like a turkey. It's not a turkey because we eat turkey legs at our football games. So that would be cannibalism or like some type of thing. It looks like a turkey. And we do the hokey pokey between third and fourth quarter. So between third and fourth quarter, the tubas go down to the field and everybody stands up and we do the hokey pokey. So you thought you were joking. No, that's a real thing. Yes. Um, so I am going to just leave the candy in a bucket and I'm going to say take two. If somebody gets greedy, it is what it is. My son is going to be Minecraft armor, diamond armor. My son is going to be diamond armor. He absolutely adores Minecraft. He can talk to you about Minecraft on just, I'm trying to teach him conversations should go back and forth because he will just talk about Minecraft all day, every day, and just a monologue about Minecraft if you let him. And so he is going to do that. Current or former Virginia Tech student. So, and we do the hokey pokey. Uh, cool. So I have friends that did forensic work. I have friends that worked at the state hospital for Virginia. Sorry, my God, my seat. Okay, I gotta do my squirrel. Where is it? So trigger warning for like squirrel moment. Enter the Sandman is the best. And they actually had the band, they actually had them at Virginia Tech, I think like last week or a few weeks ago, they were actually there to do that. Oh, so are you Oregon? We Are the Ducks, or you're talking about the Sandlot, or What is it? One of those movies. Squirrel. All right. So my train has left. I was gonna say something before and I completely forgot it. So next we are going to cover a really difficult case. Somebody sent me this case. It is about a man in Ireland that catfished, I think, thousands of children. It ended up driving one of them to, so trigger warning, to end her life. And then a little over a year later, her father, because her father never knew why, like what triggered it. And he ended up um, having the same fate. And the individual that was behind all of it, he was arrested and he's going to be in jail for the rest of his life. So I want to talk with you all about protecting kids online, about sexploitation, especially of children, and conversations to have with kids about things like that. And so that's what we are going to do next. Um, I am going to start the next video in just a few minutes, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. I will add some like chapters at the bottom later. I will see y'all in the next one.